Hey guys, we are going to graph an equation with a square root in it, okay? Now, we always have the option whenever we're graphing something to pick a number for x, plug it in, get a y, and graph that ordered pair, right? But that can be very time consuming, or we might not know what numbers to plug in to give us a good idea, right? So good news is when we are working with a square root, we have something what we like to call, was that proper English? I don't know. We have a parent graph. That helps us out, okay? If we were just being asked to graph y equals the square root of x, this is what the graph would look like, okay? But we have a lot of different things happening to our equation, right? We've got a -1/2 on the front, heaven forbid, and then we've got a -4 on the back, okay? So we just need to know how these things affect this parent graph, right? And I'm gonna tell you, okay? So first of all, the number out front, we've got a -1/2 in this case. The negative flips my graph down. So you see how this one goes up and over, right? But that negative means instead of going up and over, we're gonna go down and over, okay? So that's one thing that changes. The 1/2 is going to shrink my graph. And if you're like, what does that even mean? I'm gonna show you real fast, okay? Here is an example of what this can do. The blue one is that parent graph I just showed you, okay? The green one you see has a 4 out front, okay? That stretches it. You see how the green one is stretched? And the red has a 1/4 out front and it compresses it, okay? So that is what the number out front does. So I like to make a little note for myself that says, because of this negative, it's going to be flipped. And then the 1/2 means there's going to be either, you can write either compression or a shrink of some kind, right? And plugging points in is going to be what helps us see what that shrink looks like, okay? All right, then the numbers, the h and k, tell us where our new starting point is, okay? So our parent graph starts at 0, 0. This one does not have a number being added or subtracted inside of the square root. You could think of it as the square root of x plus 0 if that helps you. But basically that just means my graph is not shifting to the right or left, okay? If there was one in there, just a side note, we do switch the sign, okay? So if it's negative, you go to the right. If it's positive, we go to the left, okay? If you want an example of that, I will link a video in the corner. The number being added or subtracted on the back is how much my graph shifts up or down. This one you stick with the sign, so -4 means we are going to go down 4, okay? So let's see what this does. So my parent graph starts at 0, 0. This one we're not moving right or left, but we are going to go down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So this is my new starting point. Okay, from here, there might be some teachers that at this point in your math journey, all right, all they want to know is that you know where the new starting point is and you know that it's flipped. So you draw like a little graph that goes like that, right? And then you might make a little note on the side that says there is a vertical shrink of by a factor of 1/2, okay? And that maybe your teacher just wants to know that you know that. If that's the case, go ahead and do that. Like this video. But if your teacher wants more than that, they want a few points, we're going to plug some in just in case so that you can better see what that shrink looks like, okay? So we are going to do a table and plug in some points. Now, keeping in mind, we are working with square roots, right? We are plugging in a number for x. So I don't really want to plug in like 3, right? Because the square root of 3 is not a fun number to try to work with and multiply by a -1/2, right? So I'm going to plug in numbers that are easy to work with square root wise, right? So first of all, I know that if I were to plug in 0, I would get -4, right? Because that's that point we have. You can always double check. But I know if I were to plug in 0, I would get -4, okay? Now I'm going to plug in 1, because I know the square root of 1 is a nice number. And I'm also going to plug in 4 because I know the square root of 4 is a nice number, okay? So let's go ahead and see what happens when I plug in these numbers. Now, if you don't mind working with decimals, you plug in whatever number makes you happy, okay? All right, but let's go ahead and plug these in. So I'm going to have y equals -1/2 times the square root of x. We are plugging in 1 minus 4. Okay, now the square root of 1 is just 1, right? And 1 times the negative 1/2 is just negative 1/2. So then I'm going to have negative 1/2 minus 4. So I'm combining those, which will give me negative 4.5, right? Or we could think of it as negative 4.5 if that's easier for you to think of. Either way. So when I plugged in 1, I got negative 4.5. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph that. So when I do 1, I got negative 4.5. So about there. This is good news because remember I said it should be going down, and it is. Okay, let's plug in 4. So I have y equals negative 1/2 times the square root of 4 minus 4. Okay, so I'm going to have y equals negative 1/2 times the square root of 4, which is 2, right? I'm just going to put parentheses around these guys so we don't get confused, minus 4. Okay, negative 1/2 times 2 is going to give me a negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to have y equals negative 1 minus 4. If you need multiplying fractions review, I'll link a video. And then negative 1 minus 4 gives me negative 5. Okay, so when I plugged in 4 for x, I got negative 5 for y. So let's go ahead and put that on my graph. 4 down 5, there we go. Okay, so now my graph is going to look a little something like that. Okay, so if you've been graphing ones that don't have fractions out front, you'll notice that it's a lot skinnier this way, right? So it's compressed, okay? So hopefully this made sense. If you need some more graphing square roots videos, I will link a playlist for you. Thanks.